It's Bible Club, it's Bible Club, it's Bible Club in our town. There's singing, there's laughing, let's get the word around. You're all excited, and we are all delighted. It's Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club, Bible Club in our town. Our lessons today and for the next few weeks are going to be about a word in our verse. Can anybody tell what the lessons will be about? What word in our verse the lessons will be about? How many can tell what word in our verse the lessons are going to be about today and for the next 3 weeks? What do you think? You think God? Okay, God will be part of the lessons. Who thinks they can everyone say it together? Class?
Faith.
Faith. That's right. It's right there. Faith. And most of our lessons are going to be about one man's faith. He was what? Now lots of people in the Bible had faith. In fact, if you don't have faith, you can't
Go to heaven.
you can't please him. And who's him? God. That's right. So if you don't have faith, you can't please God. And there's a lot of people, the Bible tells us, that they did please God. And so that must mean that they had faith. Now, one of the things I want you to learn today is that faith is obedient. Faith obeys. Okay? Say that with me. Faith obeys. So if somebody has faith, they obey. Who do they obey? God. They obey their parents, because God said, "Oh, children, obey your parents," right? So faith, if a person has faith, they obey, and they obey God. And so today we're going to learn a little bit about Abraham. Abraham had two names. Well, he had one name. Listen here, KK and James. James, listen to the lesson here, even though you probably already heard it before. Listen to how I decide to tell the lesson today. So, there was a man, well, there's lots more cups, so just don't let it bother you. There's a man by the name of Abram. But before we tell you about Abram, we have to tell you about Abram's family before him. And Abram's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, his name started with an A, and we learned about him about 3 weeks ago. So who can tell me who Abram's and everybody's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather is? Adam. That's right. And Adam was created by God with no sin, right?
Yep.
And he lived in a perfect garden. Everything was perfect because God had made it perfect. But then it became not perfect. Why was that? Because of sin. Because Adam sinned and Eve sinned. And so Adam and Eve sinned, and then we read in the Bible about Adam and Eve's children, especially Cain. And what about Cain? What did he do? He sinned. He killed his brother. And then last week, Sophie, last week we learned about how people over and over, everybody in the whole world sinned, and they didn't care that they sinned. They were wicked. The only thing they could think about was evil continually, except for one man. Except for one man, God decided, because the whole world was evil and all they could think about was sinning all the time, He was going to destroy the whole world with water, with a flood, except there was one man who had grace in God's sight. He had faith, and his name was Noah. That's right. And so Noah built the ark, and he and his 3 sons built the ark, and they got on the ark, and Noah's wife and their 3 sons' wives. So 8 people were on the ark, and God killed everything that was on the earth because they were judged by God for their sin. But God had grace on Noah. And after the flood, Noah and his family came off the ark, and the animals came off the ark, and they offered a sacrifice. They worshipped God. And then, what do you think happened? They had children, right? And their children had children until there was a whole lot of people on the earth. Now God told Noah that he was supposed to spread over the whole earth. Now could Noah do that by himself? No, but he told his sons what they were to do, and they told their sons and children what they were supposed to do. And God wanted the people of the earth to spread over the whole earth. But many generations later, they decided they didn't want to do that. No one ever moved away. They all stayed in one place, and they got to thinking, the important people thought, we want everybody else to look up to us and to do what we say to do. And so we want people to think that we're great. And that sounds like pride, right? And pride is sin against God. God had said, spread out over the earth. And they didn't. They said, we're going to build us a great big tower that will lead us to heaven. And so they started doing it. And you know what happened? You might have heard this before. While they were working on this tower in this giant city, very powerful people, God came and saw that they weren't doing what He said to do. Do you think He sent a flood to destroy them? No, because He promised He would never send another flood, didn't He? So you know what He did? He went down there and He did something in their brains, in their mind, so that there was all of a sudden there was lots of different languages. Before this time, everybody spoke the same thing, just like we all speak English. But after that time, people spoke different languages, and I was thinking that I wouldn't be able to illustrate this, but I think I can illustrate this. Right, Megan? Can you say some words in another language? Just say something.
A little bit
Did you hear what she said? Oh man. So if we were going to build a big tower, I might say, bring me the bricks. And she might say, where do I find the bricks? But I can't tell what that means. So now we can't do what we want to do, can we? Because not only 2 languages, 20 languages, all kinds of different languages. So who brought all the different languages into the world? God did. God confused the languages is actually what He did. He confused the languages, so then, could they keep working on their big tower? No, they spread out. God forced them to do what He said. And so everybody that could understand what she said moved with her to another part of the world, and they did what they, and then everybody who could understand Spanish moved, and they lived together because they could understand each other. But if they couldn't understand each other, like, hey, bring me something to drink, nobody understood, except for that one person. So they all lived together. They moved, they spread out, and that's how God got people to do what He said. One place that they moved, where's my map here? Yep. So that happened here. One place that a lot of people moved to was the town of Ur. In fact, it was the city of Ur, and I need to go quickly. The city of Ur, lots of people in that city, a very rich city that lived, it was built along a river. People brought stuff from across the different parts on boats and traded them for the crops and all the food that the people around Ur had. And they were a very rich city, but you think they worshiped God? No. Most people in the world, still, even after Noah, they didn't worship God. There was a few, but they didn't worship God, or they worshiped God and they worshiped other things. They looked at the sun, and they thought, the sun is very powerful. I think I will worship the sun. And other people, James, worship the moon. Yeah, they look at the moon and say, well, look what the moon does. The moon controls the months. So we're going to worship the moon. And then they would imagine that there was some type of a very powerful being, kind of like a man and kind of like an animal. So they would they'd get a piece of wood, and they'd get a knife out, and they'd carve this thing that looked kind of like a man, and had maybe some horns on him because he was powerful, and big muscles. And they'd say, this is a god. But was it a god? No, what was that? If they carved it out, what is that? It's a carving. But what's the what's that? A statue. What's another word for that? If I'm going to worship this statue, it's
Idol.
it's an idol. That's right. Everybody know, right? It's an idol. Do people worship idols today?
No.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. How many, there's big temples in other countries where there's big idols there. People worship those things. They bow down and pray to them. Some people put a statue of Mary in their front yard. Yeah. But is that statue a god? No, it's a statue. It's actually an idol, because Mary's not God, is she? No. But anyway, so in that town, they had a great big temple, and people worshiped the moon god. On a big festival day, they would take the moon god out of the temple, they would march him around the town, and everybody would say, oh, what a great moon god. They would carry this idol around. After a while, Abram thought, I don't really think these idols are real gods. There's got to be a real God beside that. And so after a while, I think he probably stopped worshiping the moon god. He didn't really know everything, thought he wasn't going to worship the moon god. And one day, the true God spoke to Abram. Now, God doesn't speak to us like he spoke to Abram anymore, because we have the Bible. Abram didn't have the Bible. God came to Abram and said, I want you to leave your town. I want you to take your family and leave your town and go somewhere. I will tell you that you're in the right spot when you get there. That was kind of strange. That'd be hard to do, wouldn't it? What would it take to do that? That's right. It would take faith to do that. If Abram had faith, he would, and beside that, God said to Abram, I'm going to take you, and out of you, I'm going to make a great nation, and from you, I'm going to bless everybody in the whole world. Now, we should remember that God promised Adam and Eve that his seed would crush the serpent's head. God promised that Jesus would come from Adam. And now he's promising Abram that he would bless the whole world from Abram's family. So what do you think? Who's going to come from Abram's family? Jesus. Someday he's going to come from Abram's family. So Abram could sit there and say, wow, I'm so glad God promised all those things. Would he have got those blessings if he stayed there in Ur?
No.
What did he have to do in order to get the blessings of God? Which means
Do it.
he had to do it. He had to do it. He had to pack up his stuff and move. And so that's what he did. He told Sarai, his wife, and they packed up their stuff, and they decided they were going to leave Ur and go somewhere. Did they know where they were going? No. You imagine some of Abram's friends saying, so I hear you're moving. Where are you going to? I don't know. He said, well, that sounds kind of silly. Why are you going somewhere and you don't know where you're going? Because God told me to. What God? The moon god? The moon god never tells me anything. No, not the moon god. The one true living God told me. Oh boy, you think people thought Abram was silly? You think they thought, what's got into his head? Yeah. So what did, but it, yeah, they thought he was crazy too. So, they moved. They got on their camels, they got all their stuff. Abram was a pretty rich man. And he and his father and his wife and his nephew, it was kind of like a cousin as far as his age, they moved and they went to the town of Haran. So Abram's dad, he worshipped idols. But he went along with it. They moved to Haran, and they stayed there. Now God had said to Abram, leave your family behind, right? He said, take your wife and leave your family. That's what he had told him. But his dad came with, and his nephew came with, so he didn't really leave all of his family behind. But he did leave, and God began to bless him a little bit. And then, when Abram was 75 years old, he lived to be 175. When Abram was 75 years old, his father, Terah, died, and he said, I think I better move along. And so, he and his wife and Lot moved from Haran, and they went down into this area called Canaan. And when they got there, God spoke to Abram again, and God said, this is the land that I'm going to give to your children. So he was just him and his servants and his wife. It wasn't very many of them. So he couldn't live in that, he couldn't just control the whole land himself. But God promised him that someday his family, his descendants, would have the land of Canaan, and it would be their land. God was going to give them that land. And Abram stopped there, and he built an altar, and he put a sacrifice on it, and he worshiped God there. So, God blessed Abraham. In fact, God promised that he would bless Abraham. God promised that he would bless people who blessed Abraham's family. And we should remember that. That God promised those things, and what did Abram do? When God promised him, Abram believed God, and he had faith, and he showed he had faith by obeying God. That's right. And so if we're going to have faith, we show that we have faith by obeying. We show that we believe God by obeying. If we don't obey, we're not showing. If we don't obey our parents, if we don't obey the Bible, we are not showing that we believe the Bible. In fact, we're showing that we don't believe the Bible. I think sometimes we do believe the Bible and we still disobey, but we should want to obey.